did you know that auto racing is all about sensor data? Well, there's a lot of other parts to it as well, but sensor data is a very important component. And today, on episode number 121 of CXOTalk, we're talking about auto racing. We're talking about information technology. I'm Michael Krigsman. My co-host is Vala Offshore. And Vala, how are you?
Michael, I'm doing great. I'm excited to learn from one of the top CIOs in not only racing, but in the industry, and also perhaps our first ultra marathoner who's on our show. Hello, Graeme.
Hey, Michael. Hey, Vala. It's a real pleasure to be here. I remember when Vivek from Tibco called you guys Click and Clack, and I just thought that was brilliant. So I love Click and Clack, so it's great to be here.
All right.
Yes, so owner of the Sacramento Kings.
So are you Click or am I Clack, or how does that work?
Whoever knows is Click. That's Vala.
Well, anytime an NBA owner calls us names, we just accept and go on. So.
Yes, and so on that note, we are joined today by Graeme Hackland, who is the Chief Information Officer for Williams Martini Racing. And anybody who is involved with Formula One or auto racing in general knows that name. Graeme, give us a sense of your professional background very briefly.
So I grew up in South Africa, and in 1990 I saw an advert in the newspaper that said, computer engineer wanted, no experience necessary, which was perfect because I'd never touched a computer. And I went for the job and got it. And from there, I became a master certified Novell engineer. Can you remember those days with Novell?
I do remember those days, yes. Novell was a great product.
Yeah, absolutely. NetWare was my thing. And I moved to England in 1994 and traveled all over England with a reseller. 1997, I got into Formula One. So this is actually my 18th season in Formula One. 1997 with the Benetton team, great times. In the year 2000, we were bought by Renault with the aim of winning the World Championship in 5 years, which I thought was going to be really tough, right? But in 2005 and 6, which are the highlight of my career so far, we did win the championships, both the drivers and instructors. Fabulous time. And then in 2014, I got the opportunity to join Sir Frank Williams and join the Williams Martini Racing team. To be a part of this business transformation that they kicked off with the sole aim of taking Williams back to the front of the grid. And I thought that was really exciting. So, yeah, so that's since January last year, I've been with the team.
That's awesome. Graeme, tell us a little bit about Williams Martini Racing, about the size of the group, the mission, and overall company profile.
So Frank and his partner, who was one of the leading technology guys of the day, recently knighted, Sir Patrick Head, set up the team in 1977. Really small team, but by 1980 they won their first world championship, taking on all of these big teams with a lot more budget than they have, and did an absolutely fantastic job. And between then and 1997, the team won 16 world championships. 7 for drivers and 9 for Williams as a constructor. So a fantastic heritage that Williams have in Formula One. And then in 2013 had a really tough year, and that's when Sir Frank decided to initiate this business transformation to take the team back to the front of the grid.
So you're the CIO of Williams Martini Racing. What does information technology in this type of organization actually do?
Yeah, so we have everything that most of the other CIOs who are watching this will recognize. I guess we operate across the whole life cycle of the Formula One car. So everything from aerodynamics to design to manufacturing to the actual engineering of the car that everybody recognizes on a race weekend when they're watching on television. So we're trying to get concepts from aerodynamics and designers as quickly as we can through that electronic chain all the way to the car.
And how does the business of racing make it unique for IT? Can you talk a little bit about the demands on your team when every second on race day matters?
And Vala, that's the key, I think. It's that real-time nature of what we do. It's very public. So when you have successes, it's amazing. Everybody wants to talk to you. And when it's not going so well, everyone disappears, and it's really public. But the great thing as well is that every 19, 20 times a year, every 2 weeks, you get a chance to have another go. So if you had a bad race, like we did earlier this year in Monaco, you've got a race coming up, and the very next race after we had a tough time in Monaco, we were on the podium. So you get that opportunity to turn things around very quickly, and season by season, the cars are changed completely, totally redesigned. So we get that constant demand for innovation, and that I think is why I've been in the industry so long. The car is changed every race, and so there's an expectation that across the whole company we'll have this constant innovation and change, and I think that's the thing that keeps all of the IT professionals who work within Formula One so engaged.
We have already a question from Twitter from Joanna Young, who's a former guest on CXOTalk and is CIO, I believe, of the Michigan State higher education university system, who's wondering, what's it like to get technology, the kind of technology that you have, to work on a race car, on this moving vehicle that's going so quickly, and with all the stresses and strains?
Yeah, we talk about connected cars now, coming onto the streets all over the world. Formula One cars have been connected cars. When I joined Formula One in 1997, they were already connected cars. Then data was being captured from the cars. So we've been doing this for a long time, instrumenting the car. We've got over 200 sensors, 1,000 channels of data, 30 to 40 people constantly reading that data over the course of the race weekend in order to firstly improve performance, and secondly to make sure that we're reliable and we get to the end of the race. So yeah, it's something that Formula One has been doing for a long time. It's been really successful. As an industry, we attract really innovative companies and people to come and work with us.
So I mean, it seems like you have this combination of speed, quality, precision, and again, real-time analytics that has to convert to insights and rapid decisions and actions. What type, with all these challenges, what type of skill set do you look for when you're recruiting into your IT organization? Are you looking for data scientists and folks that can, not only maintain the infrastructure to fuel the innovation, but also help the racing team understand, 200 sensors, 1,000 channels, and all the ocean of data that's coming at you?
Yeah, so in our vehicle science group, we will have data scientists and our chief strategist who sits on the pit wall and is making those real-time calls and giving advice to the race engineers, and they have to make those decisions in a very short space of time. And when you get it wrong, like I said, it's very public. All the fans are on social media calling you all sorts of names when they think you've got it wrong. So it's it's a great sport, but you don't half get hammered if you get something slightly wrong. Within IT, we don't have the data scientist type skills. We'll rely on our partners. So we have people like BT and Avanade who've partnered with us, and they will bring a lot of those kind of skills to us to augment the IT team. We're only 20 people within IT, and we need to make sure that we bring in extra resource and skills and people. And the kind of people that we look for in Formula One tend not to be, we don't tend to chase the technical skills. We need to find the right personalities, and that's always the tricky thing, right? You've got to find the people who can cope with these extreme demands. The guys who travel, we have people who travel with the race team and who support all of the systems and who monitor the telemetry while the car's out on the track. They have to make sure that those systems are running 100% of the time that the car is on the track. And if something goes down, because we're in a racetrack in the middle of nowhere, power, or there can be all sorts of issues, they've got to get everything back up and running very, very quickly. And so you need the right temperament and personality of person. And within the factory, people who can cope with those demands, the hours, season after season. You've got to operate at your maximum, at your best level, year after year after year if you want to be successful. And we used to have downtime during the year. When I first came into Formula One, there'd be dips for the design office in the summer, and there'd be a dip for race engineering in the winter. That doesn't happen anymore. People are working constantly throughout the year to improve the performance of this year's car or next year's. We're already working on next year's car. All of the teams will have next year's car in their wind tunnel going through the design office. So there is no more dip off. And so we need people who can cope and who can operate at their best for long periods of time.
So you're describing some of the challenges associated with IT in the racing environment, but for you, IT is much more than infrastructure. So maybe give us some insight into the kind of scope that IT encompasses.
Yeah, and look, the infrastructure is important, right? So we're in the process of upgrading and going to the latest technology with one of our partnerships with BT. They're really helping us to improve the links that we have to the track, so that we can now get data that's generated at the track back to the factory, so that more engineers can work on it in real time as it's created. We haven't been able to do that until this year, till we started working with BT. So the infrastructure is really important. We've noticed that our network, some of it is hitting capacity. So we're doing a big refresh that'll go live in the middle of August, and we'll be up to a modern, fast, great capacity, and so we'll get the infrastructure right. But you're right, Michael. There's a lot more to what we do in Formula One beyond just infrastructure that people are familiar with, and especially we see a competitive advantage in some of the applications that we're developing. As an example, I think if Williams have been underpowered in any particular area in the past decade, it's probably been in that area where some of our bigger competitors who are outspending us 2 to 1. They're doing a lot more of their own development of their applications than we have been. So we partnered with Avanade to bring us that development capability to help us with our digital journey. We felt that the tools our engineers were using, the mobility tools that they had, so that they could work wherever they were on any piece of data safely and securely, wasn't up to scratch. And so that was one of the things that we wanted to sort out pretty quickly. So we partnered with Avanade to bring us a whole heap of development resource that we wouldn't have been able to provide ourselves, but skills and for example, we developed a strategy application for our engineers this year to use at the track around tire optimization. So a lot of data about our cars, but also the data that we're provided by the tire manufacturer about all the cars. So it helps you with some predictive analytics as well. And our engineers, without this work that we did with the guys from Avanade, just wouldn't have had access to that data. And we were able to be much more aggressive in the early part of this year with our strategy than we would have been able to be. But the thing I was most impressed with was we used offshore resources from Avanade. So we used a team in India to develop this application for us, who'd never been to a Formula One track, as far as I know, most of them. I went out and met them in March and spent some time with them. And they did a show and tell and demonstrated the application that they developed. Hadn't been to a race. We're not race strategists themselves, and yet they absolutely produced a tool that our engineers were able to use from that first day. But Avanade were also able to provide us with UI expertise. And so we didn't just listen to what the engineers said, and this is where it can be a bit contentious. So if you ask an engineer what they want, they'll tell you down to the lowest detail, this is exactly what I want, don't do anything else. And we said, trust us. And we got this UI expert to analyze how they work, and then we produced a tool that he felt and we felt would be intuitive, much more intuitive for them. And actually our chief strategist said to me, I wasn't sure about what the direction you were taking, but actually I'm really pleased that I let you just, I didn't try and talk you into doing it the way we've always done it, because what you've produced now is much more useful than what you would have produced if I had put you in this box and constrained what you did.
So tell us about the data. So give us a sense of the type of data that you're collecting from the cars, and then let's talk about how you analyze that data and the impact of that data during the race itself and then following the race. So let's talk about the data.
So the data. So we have about 200 sensors on the car, and that's everything from brakes to tires to fluid levels, fuel levels, heat, temperature in different parts of the car, engine sensors, all of which are capturing about 1,000 channels of data. On a Friday, we have 2 practice sessions, 2 90-minute practice sessions. That's probably when we generate, funnily enough, the most data. We'll put more sensors in so that we can take that data back into the factory, run it in the simulator, run it on our vehicle science groups, compute power that they've got, perhaps run it in the wind tunnel as well to calibrate the model. So we'll capture a lot more data. At Silverstone, which was the British Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago, we generated about 20 gig of data just on that Friday from the car. Over the course of a whole race weekend, we'll probably generate about 120 to 150 gig of data. It depends. It depends if you get both cars to the finish. So that's one of the things that determines how much data you have. And about half of that is actually video. So we do a lot of video analysis of our cars, of our pit stops, because the pit stop, you can gain half a second to a second if you can improve your pit stop. So we really practice relentlessly, but we video it so that we can train the guys to do a better job during the pit stop. So there's the video analysis, there's all of the telemetry data that's coming off the car, that you've got about 40 people at the track analyzing, and then however many engineers we can now remotely, and we're starting to grow that group so that they can do more analysis away from the track as well, because I think that is an advantage that some of our competitors have, where we were a little constrained by the technology, to be frank. We weren't able to get the data to our engineers remotely from the track, which we can now.
And are there sensors on the drivers as well, or the 200 sensors are purely car source data?
That's purely the car data, and from time to time we will instrument the driver, and we'll be looking at heart rate, things like that. But it is an area I think there will be. I'm busy at the moment preparing our IT strategy through 2020, and I'm going to present that to the board next week. And one of the areas that I think that is really of interest to us as a Formula One team is wearables. I think wearables for the driver, but also for our pit crew, for the engineers, for our staff who are producing that car, designing it, and race engineering it. I think we can really, and it's not just about health, which we do take seriously, and our guys are really looking after themselves in terms of diet and fitness. But there's a lot more I think we can do with wearables, GPS positioning of the people during the pit stop, and also the driver's health. I think sometimes a driver will not perform at their optimum, and they won't really understand it. And I think if we had more instrumentation on the driver, we might know that perhaps they're feeling a bit under the weather. There's a bit of a bug there that you don't know. They lose a couple of kilos of weight during a race, just from the heat that there is in the cockpit. So they're a big part of the package, and they are part of that performance package. The engine, the tires, the chassis, but the driver is a big part of that performance. So I think in the future you'll see more of that instrumenting of the driver happen.
So the way you're describing it, IT is not just standing on the outside looking in at the business, so to speak, and in this case the business has to include, I'm assuming includes both the racing as you're describing as well as the back office functions, but you're actually a very significant participant in the race activities and I'm assuming the back office activities as well.
Yes, so Williams as a group have 4 businesses, and the 2 that we do the most work with are the Formula One side, but we also have an advanced engineering division. And what advanced engineering do is they take technology, know-how, the things that we know about aerodynamics, lightweight materials, energy efficiency, and they apply it to all sorts of other industries and all sorts of other projects that we've done for motorsports, for OEM car manufacturers, in aerospace, in lots of interesting industries. We did the batteries for the new electric formula that ran this year, Formula E, and I think that's also an important part of IT playing a role in helping them to take advantage of technology. So as I'm looking at our strategy through 2020, some of what I'm looking at is actually where are there business opportunities for our advanced engineering group to take advantage of technology and to be a leader in some of those technologies. But you're right, we have the back office function to support, but we are right there within the engineering of the car. I believe there is a competitive advantage, and more importantly, our Chief Technology Officer, Pat Simmons, believes there is a technical advantage from IT, and I think that's really important.
Graeme, you're a social CIO. I see you active on Twitter. You have video blogs. You actually blog as well. Where do you get your source of innovation? You talk about building an IT roadmap that looks ahead 5 years, and given the speed of innovation, it's amazing what we can think about the possibilities 5 years from now. Where do you independently research? Do you collaborate with other peer CIOs? I'm interested to know, how do you formulate this vision for such an innovative company? There's got to be tremendous amount of pressure on your shoulders to represent, the technology vision of Williams Martini Racing. So how do you do it? Give us some insights and advice to other CIOs watching.
So I follow people like you on Twitter, Vale, because you're pretty prolific, right? Uh, uh, I remember I used to subscribe to dozens of RSS feeds, right? And I used to be tracking technology, and there's lots of really good sources of information out there who are tracking the technology trends and who I follow. I've switched all that to Twitter now. I don't have a single RSS feed anymore. All of my information feeds now come through Twitter. But I need to name check someone here. So Duncan Chapman, who I've worked with a lot in the past, a guy from Gartner, has really helped me over the years, and has helped that independent advice as well. And there are other analysts that I follow and look at the trends that they're saying. And not everything that they predict is going to come true, but a lot of the trends that we're seeing already around social, mobile, analytics, cloud, these guys were predicting 10 years ago. 5 years ago, I remember sitting in one of the big conferences, analyst conferences, and thinking, wow, is what they're saying true? Are CIOs going to lose control? This whole idea of there's a perimeter and everything's inside the perimeter and the CIO controls it. And they were talking about, you're going to have to give up that control. Forget it. In fact, if you think you've got control, you've actually already lost it. So I get inspiration from those kind of people who make me think, challenge me, and I bought that straight away. I realized that this whole thing about bring your own and device, and the first person to have an iPad in those early days in my company was the CEO, which happens to lots of CIOs, right? It's the guy at the top who wants it. I remember the PA of the CEO phoning me up the day after the first iPad was launched and said, "I want one." I said, well, what are you going to do with it? I'm not sure, but they were queuing out the door to get this iPad thing, right? So I definitely need one. So there are a lot of people that I follow and track, and technology trends that I look at. Some years ago, I was advised about 3D printing as being something that was really going to change the world. So I've been tracking that industry for the last 3, 4, 5 years. 3D printing, what's called 3D printing now, has been in Formula One since the late 90s. I mean, we've been 3D printing our wind tunnel model since the late 90s. So it's technology that we're really familiar with. And seeing it grow and starting to be used in all sorts of industries now, I think is fantastic. So yeah, I read as much as I can every day. I'm looking at news feeds on Twitter, and making time. I have to make that time. I think every CIO has to carve out some time every week to be looking at the trends, what's going on, what the commentary out there is, and that tends to be how I get the guidance.
Okay, let's talk about your relationship to other parts of the company. So you are very integrated with other business units and the 4 different businesses that Williams Martini Racing operates. How were you able to make that happen? And what are some of the challenges that you face as a CIO in ensuring ensuring the maintenance, maintaining that connection to the business, so that you're not on the outside looking in, but that IT is a part of the business?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing to say is we don't have a divine right to be consulted on everything, right? I often hear I get to talk to a lot of CIOs, and one thing I should have mentioned to Vale in the last one is that I joined the CIO roundtable and was working on with a bunch of CIOs from other sports, and we were collaborating together. So that was a source of information for me as well. And some of the people that I meet are complaining that they're on the outside looking in, and I think we don't have a divine right to be on the inside. We have to prove that what we do is a competitive advantage in whatever our industry is. And some people say to me, well, it's easy for you because you're in F1, it's a high-tech industry. Actually, it's really difficult in F1 because pretty much 80 to 85% of my users think they know more than I do, and at least 50% of them do, if not right? So there's a challenge there that you can't try and hide. You can't if I don't know something, I tell them because they know more about it than I do. So I think the first thing is you've got to gain the credibility by just relentlessly focusing on so there's something in Formula One that I learned in 1997 that I've shared ever since. They talk about, does it make the car quicker? If it doesn't make the car quicker, why are we doing it? And there's also, I always add a sidebar there. You need the car to be reliable as well, because I remember in 2005, Fernando Alonso, who was one of our drivers back then, saying anybody can make a quick car for half a race. You got to get to the end. We talk about, will it make the car quicker? And I know that we're seeing now some of the Olympic teams, some of the rowing teams. Will it make the boat quicker? If not, get rid of it. We've had that focus in Formula One, from before I got there. Will it make the car quicker? And I say to people, what is in your business? What is that? Will it make the car quicker? What are you what's your goal as a business? And often CIOs have difficulty articulating that. Our job is to get stakeholder value and
Sure.
double profits and that's why they struggle to bring it back to what contribution are they making to whatever the company's business success criteria are. And I think that's always the first place to start. What are your business success criteria? Tie your IT strategy to that. Prove that that's what you're doing, that you're not in it for yourself. You don't do IT projects for IT's sake. I'm not with the team for my own for my own reasons. I'm there because I want to see Sir Frank's face when we win a race and when we win more races and ultimately we win the championship. That's why I'm there. And I think sometimes IT professionals, we lose sight of that. And that's what I like about Formula One. I think that's why a lot of people who come into Formula One will stay, is that focus. What I do, they can see a link between what they do and that end product that we see on TV as it's going around the track. And when the car is not good, that's when it's tough to motivate yourself, right? Because you're working as hard as ever, long hours, and your performance is not great. But when things are good, as they have been for Williams last year, we finished third in the championship, beating Ferrari, which I know gave the team a lot of satisfaction. Unfortunately, they're ahead of us so far this year, but we're chasing them down. But there's a relentless focus on what makes the car quicker. How can we succeed as a company in getting to the front of Formula One?
That's terrific.
Please, Vala, go ahead.
I'm going to go back to the theme of collaboration. You've got a company that's 600 employees strong. You have an IT organization that's 20. So, less than 5% of the resources in IT, and you're doing extraordinary work with new applications and analytics and big data and implementing a vision to 2020. So you're obviously collaborating with partners. You mentioned BT, you mentioned Avanade, you mentioned, working with UI, UX design experts. Talk to me about, how do you select, what criteria do you look for in partners as you scale IT by being a super resourceful CIO?
So I'm a little bit nervous about telling you the answer to this because then the other CIOs of Formula One might...
No trade secrets, no trade secrets.
No, I'm joking. The partnerships are really important, right? I think a normal vendor-supplier relationship where they sell you something and they come back in 3 years and they sell you some more, or they come back in 12 months because they know you're going to need more capacity, that I don't think that necessarily works in Formula One. The advantage that we get from partnering with Avanade, with BT, and with some of the other tech companies that we're working with is that they buy into our success. They want us to be successful because we are a reference, we are an extreme example of their technology, services. We show the world them at their best. And there have been times that we've done partnerships and the world doesn't know about it because it didn't work out. For all we all tried, we did our best, but the product, the service just didn't work in our Formula One context. And so we won't stand up and talk about it and pretend that it was okay. We need our credibility, first of all. And the partners know that. They know that if they want us to be that example of their technology at its best, they've got to deliver. And I think that enhances the IT team, magnificently, because we're all there focused, wanting the team to be successful, but so do they. So we have 6 Avanade people who work on our site every day, and then we have the offshore teams. I love being in meetings with the guys, and when you're sitting in those meetings, you can't tell who's Avanade and who's Williams.
Awesome.
They talk about
one team.
Yeah, awesome. We talk about the race on the weekend. Right. They're all watching it. They all care about the results. It's that partnership goes beyond just a a supplier who's trying to sell you more resource down the line.
Yeah, I was going to say we have a comment from Twitter from Frank Scavo, who's a top technology industry analyst, who brings up the point about indirect value being added to make the car go faster, as you were saying, and so he says on this notion of relationships with your partners, for example, paying your partners on time. Things as small as that will have some type of impact, won't they?
Wait, what do you mean by hang your partners on time? That might be
paying your suppliers on time.
Oh, paying them on time. Got it. Okay, sorry. Yeah. I think that's really important, right? So Williams will not raise an order that we couldn't pay on time. I mean, that's just culturally, how we operate. Our core values are honesty, integrity, transparency, and excellence, and that's the kind of company that we are. And I think that's so. I see the point, that you can improve your relationships with your suppliers. I had a supplier who I worked with for many years, who I'd phone up and say, something's broken, or we need something this afternoon because it's all being shipped off to Canada for the race, or today we packed for Hungary and something's not working and we need something. I've had times when he drove down 3-4 hours to our factory to personally deliver it for us, and that wasn't a partnership. That was a supplier who so it can work. You can build that relationship. I used to joke with him that there was the 7-year itch. I would say, we've been working together for 7 years. You're going to stop giving me the same attention now, and he never did, right? And it was a fantastic supplier relationship. So it can work, and it's a two-way street. We were fair with them and they were fair with us. But I think when you bring someone really into the critical path of the car, like we've done with Avanade, the performance at the track relies on the solutions that they're producing for us. You need people who are really bought into your success, because every race that we missed, so if we don't get something to Hungary, which is the next race, you've lost that opportunity. It doesn't come back. You can't delay a product launch by a week or 2 weeks and say, there's no impact. There's always an impact when we don't deliver. There's always an impact to car performance. And so we want people who care about it as much as we do. And that's what we get with these partnerships. The guys from BT who are currently deploying the new solutions for us are absolutely committed to us. You'll see them tweeting about our performance at the track. They're bought in. It's fantastic.
What about this idea of risk? Where does risk come into play in the context of the race? You said you don't want to set up a wall around using Facebook, for example, but still there is a concept of protecting the corporate assets and risk. As a CIO, that has to be very important to you.
Yeah, I care a lot about risk. I mean, one of the things I did coming into the Williams team was to establish a risk committee who meet regularly, who document the risks, who've taken accountability and responsibility for the IT risks. We're taking a much broader view of risk than perhaps Williams did in the past. When you talk about risk, everyone thinks of IT security, and maybe compliance as well. But we also look at performance and availability. We look at those 4 areas as our risks. We did a partnership with a company called DTEX. It was the first one that I did, and DTEX do an audit tool. So now we can tell, and it's really important, not just from a Formula One point of view, but our advanced engineering company have the intellectual property or confidential information of our customers. So we either jointly develop IP or we use their IP to produce a product for them. So we have to prove to them that we are safeguarding their confidential information and intellectual property. And I also, when we talk about data loss, I don't like to just focus on IP, because when you talk about IP, people think of designs, drawings that you can physically share around. They don't think about the confidential information around any part of our business, who our sponsors are, what the deals are looking like, who we're talking to in terms of becoming technical partners with the team. All that information is valuable to us. And I think the other thing that we've really focused is on understanding how long certain types of information have value. Because I think many of us treat all information the same, and it's valuable forever, and that's not true. The Formula One car from 3 or 4 seasons ago, is almost irrelevant now. The technology has changed so much in Formula One. In 2014, we brought in all new regulations, and new hybrid power units, new technology, and so the older data is not that relevant now. But the data for our car next year, right now, is our most confidential information that we should absolutely be protecting. So I put a lot of my focus, a lot of my time on IT risk, and I believe in audit over blocking. I really, we moved to Office 365 last year. We could have locked that down, taken all these nice features that are in it, and prevented our users from using them because maybe we were going to feel less secure, or that our data was going to be at risk. By putting the audit tool that we have in from DTEX, we're able to tell where our data is at rest, in movement, being printed, and our customer data, and we can protect it. So you're right to raise it. I think it's a really important, and for most of us, for most CIOs, it's really, really important that we are protecting our intellectual property, the things that will make us successful.
Sure. Graeme, you clearly have lockstep relationship with R&D and engineering and the folks that are building and making the car faster and better and more quality. Can you talk to us a little bit about your working relationship with the CMO and the marketing organizations within Williams Racing?
So there's a lot of debate going on, isn't there, in our industries at the moment?
It is. Definitely.
A couple of years ago, we were talking about the death of the CIO, right? CIO,
right.
It's going to be the chief digital officer. There's not going to be a CIO. There's just going to be an operational guy who's sit in the corner and just keep the lights on. And all the really good, fun, interesting stuff is going to happen in marketing, right?
There we go.
And we're talking about budget, right? So there's this whole shift of budget. Marketing's taking all of IT's budget. Actually, I have a great relationship with our CMO, and actually I have a great relationship with Avanade's CMO as well, Stella Goulet, who I've done a lot of work with this year around the partnership and the messaging of how we are digitizing our business, how we are turning our workplace into a digital workplace, and what that means for us to enable mobility and collaboration. I've asked Avanade to focus on usability, and I've asked our internal teams as well. Think about what it's like for the person that you're developing or bringing the solution to. What's it going to be like for them to use it? Often we and maybe it comes from some of the big vendors who produce these huge solutions, and then you need to go on a week's training course to learn how to use it. I want things that are intuitive for our users to use, that they can pick up and use straight away. When we did the Office 365 move, we did a staff survey. We asked them all, do you want formal training lessons? And they all said, just give it to us. We'll pick it up as we go along. We know, Outlook is not that difficult a tool to use. So that's the kind of thing that we want to do. We want to produce tools and solutions that are easily usable, but we want to think about them from the user perspective, not from an IT perspective, not from what's easiest for us to support. I think I've been as guilty through my long career in IT from 1990 on in doing things that were easier for us to support. If everyone has the same laptop, it's really easy for IT to support that estate. That's not good. That's not good for our colleagues. So yeah.
So you're definitely focused from looking at technology from the user perspective. We have only a few minutes left, so innovation is obviously very important to you. So tell us a little bit about innovation, how you innovate, how the company thinks about innovation.
There's that say, innovate or die. In Formula One, if you're not innovating constantly through the season, you will just disappear down the order. Success for a Formula One team is finishing as high as possible in the Constructors' Championship. That brings in your income. That gets you TV time if you're on the podium. So being successful on the track is really important. And the only way you can do that is by constantly iterating and innovating. And so as a company, and I think as an industry, Formula One has this ethos of constantly innovate. And so there's an expectation that whether you're working in marketing or you're working in IT or in other parts of the business, you will innovate as well. You will constantly bring innovation to the team to help with our key business success criteria.
Graeme, give us some advice to fellow CIOs How do they accelerate innovation? How do they stay relevant? What's the one or two things that they need to constantly focus on in order to make sure IT has a proverbial seat at the table?
So one of the things I do is every day I leave my desk and I go and visit someone in the company. And I go and talk to them about what are their challenges, what are they working on. I don't necessarily ask them where can IT help. I just want to understand what they're doing, and I'll maybe be able to come up with some suggestions and areas that we can help. Very often, of course, they'll tell me that they want help and they want me to help. But I think we've got to get out there, and my management team as well. I encourage them every single day, get out there, talk to the rest of the company, find out what their challenges are, because I think you can lose touch with. The regulation changes every single year in Formula One. There's this constant changing landscape of regulation and how the car has to be produced and designed, and we need to understand that if we're going to be able to produce solutions that are going to help. So I think it's being in touch with the company. I've talked to CIOs who feel like they're a separate business, that they could just take the IT function and it could be completely separate from the company. I feel that that's a huge mistake. Because then you're just a supplier. You're not bought in like we are. Like I think we are in Formula One. IT groups in Formula One are absolutely part of the critical path of a Formula One car. And I think that's the best way to make sure that you're listening to what people are needing, and you're going off. And if you're focused on that usability and giving people tools that will make their lives easier, will get the data to them quicker, will make the car quicker, then you will have a seat at the table. They will value you. But the only way to do that is to prove it. And one of the things I've said to my management team is we need to get our own house in order. IT needs to be efficient. We need to be spending the money that we get wisely. I hate waste. We should not waste any of the money, because whatever money we can give back to the team, whatever money we can save by doing partnerships or by finding technology or someone who'll give it to us a bit cheaper, whatever money we can save, we'll go back to the car, and we'll go back to more iterations, more design, more development. So we really want to focus on internally, are we doing the best job? Are we the best IT function that we can be? Those companies that shadow IT is a big problem in, and people are off buying all their own solutions and services. Again, there's that you don't have the divine right to be the IT vendor anymore as an internal function if you're not absolutely sitting next to them, living their pain. If you work to shift, all your people work to shift and go home, and they're not there when the engineer is working and struggling, and he can't get hold of you when he needs help, then you don't deserve a place at the table.
Graeme, we have just 2 minutes left, and so very briefly, this relationship is a two-way street. And so what advice do you have to non-IT executive management in terms of creating an opportunity for IT to really shine?
That's a really good one. And that's important. Give your IT a chance. If you're an IT function that is constantly being driven down on your funding levels, you've just got to reduce everything that you spend. If there was a trade-off, I remember Dave Aaron from Gartner saying, if you could get the agreement with your company to take everything that you saved operationally on a seesaw and they gave it to you to do innovation, wouldn't the company be better off? And so I think I would say that to other executives within companies. Give your IT function a chance, but also it's not all about squeezing the money and trying to get IT as cheap as possible. I think we're through that. Innovate. Give them the opportunity to innovate. Give them some headspace to innovate. If they're constantly firefighting, if all the resources are absorbed on keeping the lights on, you're not going to get the best out of your IT function. They care. They want to be part of the successful output.
Fantastic. Vala, we learned a lot about F1 racing today.
That was a fast, no pun intended, 45 minutes. And Graeme, as expected, dropped a lot of incredible advice. Thank you so much, Graeme. I know it's past 8 o'clock local time for you, so spending a Friday evening with us, it was a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, Vala. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Michael.
We have been talking today on episode number 121 with Graeme Hackland, who is the Chief Information Officer of Williams Martini Racing. Everybody, thank you for watching. Please sign up for our newsletter so you can stay abreast of the latest on CXOTalk and stay connected to our guests. Next week at this time, we will be speaking with Craig Newmark, who is the founder of Craigslist. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Vala, I hope you have a great week.
You as well, Michael. Thank you. You as well, Graeme.
Thank you.
Everybody, goodbye.